Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Football Focus with Ben and Dan.
I'm Ben.
I'm Dan. Last episode we talked to you guys about the people we wanted on our fantasy team this year. This episode we're going to talk to you about the 5 guys that we do not want on our team. As always, like us, subscribe to us, email us, tweet us. The more views, the more likes, the more questions we get, the more likely we'll be able to start giving away prizes, as well as read your comments and questions out loud on the air. Ben, take it away.
Well, the first guy that I don't want on my fantasy team this year is a guy who's had a couple successful years over the last few years, Eric Decker, New York Jets wide receiver. He comes to the New York Jets after having a couple really successful years with Peyton Manning as his quarterback. Well, he's going to take a step back this year, and I mean a major step back this year, as Geno Smith is probably going to be the starting quarterback. As we all know, I am on the Geno Smith hate train, and I am pulling the whistle for that train. Eric Decker comes off a couple of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, I believe. He's had multiple touchdowns this year. I think he's maybe 500-600-yard guy, 3-4 touchdowns if he's lucky. Eric Decker's a guy I'm staying away from.
Yeah, I don't like him either. I wasn't that huge on him when he was in Denver, and that's with Peyton Manning throwing in the ball. Now, while I do believe in Geno Smith, I do not believe in him enough to draft anyone he's throwing the ball to. Eric Decker is a definite no-go for me this year in fantasy football, and should be for you as well.
My number 2 no-go is a guy that we used to have a lot of love for, Antonio Gates, tight end for San Diego. Father Time catches up with every NFL player, and the same can be said for Antonio Gates. He's 34 now, and he plays like he's about 45. His feet are slow. He can't get it done anymore. Philip Rivers still has a good connection with him. He's still going to make plays. I'm not saying he is completely irrelevant in fantasy, and he's going to slide up into some people's boards a little higher than others, but he's not safe anymore. But Darius Green is the better long-term bet for that tight end position, and on your fantasy team, Darius Green should be the guy you're taking over Antonio Gates, I feel like.
Now, I do believe that Antonio Gates should be drafted before Green, but not entirely. I would feel more comfortable with Green on my bench than Antonio Gates in my lineup. As been noted, Gates is getting older. He can't do it forever. He's been so great for so many years, but it is time for a change of the guard.
Well, my number 3 don't want is going to be consisting of 3 players. It's the Bills' backfield. I don't know what's going on in Buffalo with their backfield. I don't know why they traded for Bryce Brown, and I don't know why C.J. Spiller can't just run away with the starting job every year. And Fred Jackson somehow finds a way to be fantasy relevant, only to find his way on somebody's bench and score a touchdown and have 100 yards on 6 carries, which he has done. Stay away from the Bills' backfield. It is a nasty, scary situation. Like I said, all 3 of those guys get started in other teams. But if you're going to take someone based off of talent alone, C.J. Spiller is your best option. He is the most talented player in that backfield.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I wouldn't even look at C.J. higher than top 3rd round maybe, and that is because nobody ever knows what's going to happen. Fred Jackson will continue to defy time, if I could guess. Bryce Brown will eat just enough carries to matter, and that will hurt C.J., who, while having the most talent, for sure is the most injury risk of the group in my opinion. But like I said, it's a crapshoot. I don't want anything to do with it either.
Well, my number 4 guy is a guy that I feel like can land on this list. It seems like every season, especially over the last 3 seasons or so. It's Dwayne Bowe, number 1 wide receiver for Kansas City Chiefs. This is a guy who has gobs of talent. He could have been up there with some of the greatest, not necessarily of all time, but of the last 10 years or so. Dwayne Bowe just doesn't get it done on a consistent enough basis to be on your fantasy roster. Early, at least. He's a good guy to have down the stretch, but you don't want to be reaching for this guy. With Alex Smith throwing you the football, this is a dink and dunk offense as far as the passing game goes. Jamal Charles is the focal point of this offense, leaving Dwayne Bowe for sloppy seconds there, and you're going to have to set up for Dwayne Bowe. Let him slide down to you, don't reach for him.
Oh, of course, I agree completely. And you got to remember, the Chiefs downgraded this year. They didn't give Bowe any help on the other end, but they also downgraded their line, so Smith probably isn't even going to have as much time to throw. Bowe will probably be lucky to match his poor numbers from last year. I wouldn't take him in the starting lineup if he's there at the right spot on the bench. Grab him for the talent, but there are many options that are much better and especially much safer.
Well, my number 5 guy is going to be a guy we're going to talk about for those of you that play in 2 quarterback leagues like me and Daniel do. It is Jay Cutler, Chicago Bears quarterback. Now, while he has one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL with Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall, not to mention Martellus Bennett tight end, who is a beast, Jay Cutler's just not a safe guy to have. He throws a lot of, he has a lot of turnovers every year, whether it's fumble, interception. He's also very injury prone. This is a guy who it seems like can't stay healthy, but yet got a mega contract. Don't really understand it. Stay away from Jay Cutler, as he's just not a guy that you're going to want to even have. And for sure, in a 1 quarterback league, he shouldn't really be starting. He shouldn't be starting, period. But in a 2 quarterback league, let him slide. There are going to be guys that are more valuable above him.
I agree. Talent does not a quarterback make, at least as far as the receivers go. If it did, Jay Cutler would be a stud, but he still isn't, so that means stay away from him. I don't like him, never have. Like I said, he's like Dwayne Bowe. He's got all the tangibles, all the talents, all the things you want to see, but he just doesn't ever seem to put them together. But anyway, let me get on to my 5 guys that I want nothing to do with this year. Starting with number 1 running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Doug Martin. Now, I like Doug Martin coming out of the draft, was very high on him as a rookie. Proved to be extremely right when I listed him as a sleeper back then. However, last year, he did not play up to that potential. He got hurt, as everybody knows, which derailed his season, but even before that injury, he was not playing up to his draft status. And I don't see a whole lot to change that this year. Tampa Bay did upgrade its offense as far as receiving core goes, but I just don't see it as enough to draft Martin. They're talking about a potential running back by committee, which everyone knows is the death knell for fantasy running backs. And while it may not be totally valid, it scares me. I think they want to keep Martin healthy as he is still young in his career, and I could see him doing it. And he's a guy that I don't want to have to draft where his position to draft is going to be.
I'm still pretty high on Doug Martin. You know, he's a guy that I feel like they talk about that sophomore slump for a lot of players. Usually that's applied to quarterbacks. I feel like they kind of happened to Doug Martin last year, second-year player out of Boise State. He's coming back this year. He's going to be healthy. Missed basically all of last year with the injury. They're going to have some more weapons on the outside now with Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans. Josh McCown, I feel like, is probably a slight upgrade at the quarterback position, at least with his veteran presence. Doug Martin is going to have the ability to, he obviously has playmaking ability. As we saw his rookie year, he was phenomenal as a rookie. I don't think he's as dangerous as maybe it seems like, but definitely not a guy you want to reach for. Let him kind of slide down. That injury will make him slide. Somebody's going to get him. I feel like he might be a steal.
My second guy is actually a duo. It's Julio Jones and Roddy White, the receiving core of the Atlanta Falcons. While a lot of people, I'm sure, are a little stunned to hear those 2 names, as they have been known as one of the best duos since Julio was drafted, I just don't like him this year. Roddy is starting to catch up with Father Time. I expect him to slow down for sure. Julio, I love Julio. Loved him since he was in college, but the injuries have just been too frequent and too severe. His foot injury last year, as you might have heard elsewhere, actually did not just break his foot, but broke the screw that was already holding that previously broken foot together. Meaning Julio really leans on that foot, really pushes off hard. That's something that scares me. I expect that to be a potentially lingering injury. If he manages to stay healthy, he will be a stud. But that's not a gamble I'm willing to take in the 2nd round. Roddy's pedigree is going to land him right around the top 4th round. I don't want to take that there either. If Julio's gone, Roddy's going to get slammed by coverage. And you got to remember, all-world tight end Tony Gonzalez has retired. So those safeties and those coverage backers are not going to have to stay as committed to that tight end coverage role. I expect declines from both, and that decline being potential injury for Julio.
Couldn't agree more. Julio Jones will go down with an injury at some point this season. He just can't stay healthy. I think that foot thing could end up being a career derailer. It's a sad thing to say that because he's such a talented young receiver. Roddy White, like you said, kind of the same thing with Antonio Gates. Father Time is starting to catch up with him. Like you said, his pedigree is going to make him drafted early. Can anybody say hello, Harry Douglas? You're going to be on call this year yet again, especially with Tony G gone. That's a wide receiver situation you just want to stay away from in the NFC South.
Oh yeah, to keep it on the receiving end of the ball, another guy I don't want this year, Victor Cruz. A lot of people like Victor Cruz. I like his celebrations, but I got a bad feeling about him this year in fantasy. Yeah, New York drafted Odell Beckham to help relieve their ailments on Cruz now that Nix is gone. Ruben Randall, I expect him to step up. But that being said, I would not be surprised to see Ruben Randall become the real #1 in this offense. Victor Cruz is more suited to that slot role. I expect him to move into there, and while he will produce, I do not think it will be at the levels he has in the past. I expect Victor Cruz to take a step back this year. He will still be a wide receiver 2, but not a wide receiver 2 that I have a good feeling about this year.
Couldn't agree more. I might even hang on Victor Cruz just a little more than you even. I'm not high on this guy, the undrafted free agent a couple of years ago. Defenses didn't really know what to expect with him when he came out, so I really don't think they had the #1 corners on him the first year he was in the league, of course. Now last year, the entire offense for the Giants was just abysmal last year. They lost David Wilson. They had a smattering of different running backs ending the year with like Peyton Hillis and a couple other guys that were getting carries. Don't think it's going to be. I don't like their wide receiver core at all that much anyway. Ruben Randall is probably the most #1 ready right now to be that #1. I do like Ruben Randall, but I don't like any of the receivers. Victor Cruz is not a good bet to grab early this year. People are probably going to reach, let him slide, get him where he belongs. When there's nobody better than him available, you just need to go ahead and let Victor Cruz slide down to you.
My 4th guy, an Iron Man, an age defier, someone I put on my dislike list last year that come back to kind of bite me. Frank Gore running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Frank, you've been great for many years. You've torched my Cardinals repeatedly. But I just got to put you on that list I won't draft. You continue to age, and I just fear the age. You've had a lot of carries your whole career. I don't want Frank Gore, guys. I would stay away from him if I were you. At some point, he is going to slow down, and the Niners are drafting each year like they expect them to. They continue to add quality running backs. I just don't want anything to do with Frank Gore. I will not draft him in fantasy, almost no matter where he is at on the board.
I love Frank Gore as a player, not as a fantasy player this season. The old vet out of the University of Miami, this is a guy that I feel like is done. Let's just be honest. I don't know how much more Frank Gore, if you're watching, you have left in the tank, and I don't know how you continue to put up numbers, but I look at the tread on your tires, and I see the wire sticking out. How you continue to survive all the time amazes me, but you are done, Frank Gore. You play in one of the toughest conferences in the National Football League. You can't hold off Marcus Lattimore forever, who says he's going to take your job. I don't think he's going to take your job, but you are done. That is all I have on Frank Gore.
As I said, I agree completely. And my 5th and final guy, Percy Harvin, wide receiver, Seattle Seahawks. Percy Harvin, all the talent in the world, MVP type talent, but not a body for it. Injuries last year derailed the season. You've had him all your career with the Minnesota Vikings. I fear Percy Harvin's injury history, and that keeps me away from drafting him. Quality of player, he's definitely a wide receiver 1, but I don't trust it. There's too many other strong receivers in fantasy football for me to draft Percy Harvin.
Well, for every guy like Daniel that's going to let him slide, he's going to be a guy like me that when Percy Harvin begins to make that descent down to me, I'm going to snag him. Percy Harvin has so much talent. We saw what he did when I threw this jersey that I'm wearing right now in the trash can because of the poor game Peyton Manning had and the great game Percy Harvin had in the Super Bowl last year. I just feel like Percy Harvin is going to come out if he can somehow stay healthy, which is a knock that I obviously could agree with Daniel on. Percy Harvin has the ability to be such a playmaker. You can use him a lot of different ways. I'm a little higher on him, but yes, the injury proneness is going to bring his value down. Don't overreach, but he will slide a little bit. Grab him.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that'll do it for our fantasy football dislikes this episode. But anyway, guys, we'll hit you up next time. Make sure to like us, subscribe to us, email us, tweet us. Our email, once again, is footballfocusbenanddan@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is FFBDdan.
Mine is at FFBD.
Thanks, guys. Like us, subscribe to us. We hope to be reading y'all's emails live soon. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.